Hello, I'm Ian Dury. I've got a funny arm and a funny leg and I'm a bit cracker.
Hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me, hit me. Das ist gut, say. Fantastic. Hit me, hit me, hit me.
Well, all the lyrics are like, try and ask questions in the same language that the people who I want to listen to the music would use.
He was very sexy, and I think probably the first Raspberry Ripple since Lord Byron to be a sex symbol.
I come away with the gift for womankind. You're still asleep, but the gift don't seem to mind.
You say naughty things and use industrial language.
Industrial language? He's a rascal, isn't he?
Sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sex and drugs and rock and roll.
In 1977, I was a discontented teenager in a small town on the Kent coast with a Saturday job in a jeweller's shop. When Ian Dury sang "Sex and drugs and rock and roll are all my brain and body need," it seemed like the best philosophy I'd ever heard, even though at the time I only had access to the rock and roll, and not a lot of that either, with LPs costing upwards of a day's wages. 15 years later, and a producer for Radio 4, I stood at the bottom of a stairwell in a block of flats in Hammersmith. A familiar silhouette shuffled to the banister of an upper floor and called down, "Oi, Hillman Hunters, is that you?" With me was a listener, and together we were recording an item about attitudes to disability for the programme Punters. It was us.
I've known people who are going bald, who suffer much more when the wind blows their flap off the top of their head than I've ever suffered from having polio. I always think it's just not only irrelevant but invisible. I met a doctor once. I went to see him, I don't know what it was about. I think it was probably about piles actually, and I went to see him. It was just 9 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? Yeah. I hope you've had a nice breakfast this morning, and he goes, oh, I love the way you disguise that. I love that. He said, you'd never know. I thought, well, you'd never know. I didn't even think about it in those terms, you know, whether you'd know or not.
Recording Ian for Punters marked the start of a relationship that spanned the rest of his life, where we worked together on a number of Radio 4 shows. He was clever, articulate, had a unique take on whatever he was talking about, and came across as slightly dangerous. In other words, he made a very good guest. Something that must have been recognised by other producers, as there's a lot of Ian Dury in the BBC archives. Listening to it, it seems as though no one could resist asking about his disability, what Ian described as his funny arm and funny leg that was the result of getting polio at the age of 6. This extract from the 1979 programme Nationwide begins uncomfortably, though Ian turns it around.
You obviously, I mean, you are disabled.
It's not obvious, is it?
Well, I don't know. How does that restrict you?
The only way it has ever restricted me was with the omnibus situation of it all. So, missing the occasional one, which was always a good idea anyway, and request stops being what they are these days. And the queuing of it all. Blimey, you ever queue for number 6 bus near C&A's at Marble Arch, going up towards Kensal Rise? My life. I used to get on the thing and hang on to the rail. As the bus was coming in, I'd get on the rail like that and lean out and lean into them and knock them all down. Or smash them all up against them. God, dear old Lord.
After going to and teaching at art college, Ian's first significant musical adventure was with the ramshackle pub rockers Kilburn and the High Roads, later described by the singer Reckless Eric as both exciting and like a badly made sandwich with bits squeezing out of the edges. Ian's defining moment, though, was meeting the musician Chaz Jankel.
One morning I got up and I was playing drums. I was playing Malcolm's drum kit. And behind me I was giving it boom, chip, boom, chip, is what about all I can do. And behind me I heard a bit of funky music. And I went, hello, and my ears pricked. I looked around, it's Chaz. At that very moment I heard what I wanted to hear. I felt a shared rhythmical inspiration. That's not too highfalutin a way of approaching it. I just got a buzz, adrenaline rush right up my body. And it's hard to describe, but I'm English, and I don't want to be American. I don't want to sing in American, but I'm well influenced by Afro-American music and African music and reggae music, and it's still kind of dancing return to the good foot, as we call it, or as James Brown called it. It's still a place where you drop. As soon as I heard Chaz playing, very simple clarinet-y type piano behind me, I knew that he had... I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but there's a shared thing. I packed the Kilburns in the end of that week, and we started writing together.
Ian signed to the independent post-punk record label Stiff Records, and with a bunch of superb musicians, soon to be called the Blockheads, Ian released his first single, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, which was promptly banned by the BBC. This was followed soon after with the release of the album New Boots and Panties, a debut brimful of stories from the Badlands of Essex, such as Clever Trevor, Billericay Dicky, and the first top 10 hit, What a Waste. Ian went out on a now legendary tour, playing up and down the country with other artists on the Stiff label, Reckless Eric, Larry Wallace, Nick Lowe, Dave Edmunds and Elvis Costello. The comedian Linda Smith was an early fan.
I remember it very clearly, seeing him on television, and then I remember after that seeking out the Stiff live shows and going to one of those great shows with him and Reckless Eric, and just this wonderful... They were just fantastic. They were like nothing you'd ever seen before. It was just a moment of sheer joy, really.
Reasons to be cheerful, part 3. Summer Buddy Holly, the working folly, good golly Miss Molly, and boats. Hammersmith Pally, the Bolshoi Bally, jump back in the alley, add nanny goats. 80-wheeler camels, Dominica camels, all other mammals plus equal votes. Seeing Piccadilly, Fanny Smith and Willie, being rather silly, and porridge oat.
Beyond the musicality of the Blockheads, what I always found exciting and engaging about Ian's work was the sheer poetry of his lyrics, the oddness of his rhymes, and the characters he created, so real they seemed to climb out of the speakers and wander round on their own. The songs seemed to pull off that rare trick of celebrating